Hello interwebs, welcome to Let's Fix Computers. I'm starting this video with a voiceover because I kind of pivoted what this video was about halfway through recording it. The video started out as what was basically going to be a bit of a rant / cautionary tale about the computer that I was working on, which was a very unbalanced spec. And what I mean by that was the headline specs on it were pretty good. We had an i5 9600KF paired with an RTX 2060. So, good CPU and graphics card. But the problem was that was all seated in an Asus H310M motherboard with 2400 megahertz RAM. Obviously not so good. Anyone who knows their Intel platforms will know that obviously that 9600KF is going to be horridly bottlenecked by 2400 megahertz RAM and a H310 chipset. It'll run, and it'll run at its stock speed, but the point of a K-series processor is that you don't run at stock. You overclock it or you tune it. Even if you're not doing monstrous overclocks, you go that little bit further. And obviously none of this is possible when you're soft-locked behind a low-end chipset. So I had a big old rant about this, and I had another rant about why I think it's dumb that system integrator websites like AWDIT, who built this one, or places like PC Specialist, allowed this to happen. I think their website should have had a system that would look at the spec and say, hey, perhaps you should be upgrading your motherboard with these other things. But as I say, I ranted for the best part of half an hour or so before I was just like, you know what, I don't actually like how this video is coming out. Let's do something else with this. And so instead what I've done is we're replacing the motherboard. I've pulled out the H310 and we're going to put in an MSI Z390A Pro board, which is a cost-effective Z390 board. And I'm going to do some tests to show what the performance difference between them is and show how we don't get a direct performance improvement by going to a higher rated motherboard, but we unlock the potential of the hardware we have. So let's jump into it. You know what I should have done? I should have benchmarked this and done before and afters. Oh, you know what? I'm going to do that actually. Because I'm not really very happy with this video that I'm making at the moment, because it's basically just been me ranting. And I don't want this video to be a rant. What I would like it to do is, every video I make, I want the video to have a conclusion, basically. I want the video to have a conclusion and a message. And that message might be, here is how you fix a problem or something like that. But like this video, the message might be, don't poorly spec your computer. However, also, in this instance, the conclusion can also be, here is the difference that a good motherboard versus a bad motherboard will make. Even if that conclusion is, hey, look at that, the benchmark is exactly the same. But we'll see. What I'm going to do, I'm going to quickly bench set up this CPU motherboard and RAM, and we'll just run it through TimeSpy. I'm just going to blitz it through TimeSpy. And we'll just do a TimeSpy bench on it, and then we'll put all the new stuff in and build it back up again. Yeah, I'm going to do that. I think that'll be really interesting. One TimeSpy later, and we've got 7227. So the CPU score is probably more interesting here at 5746, because the graphics score will probably stay exactly the same, because the graphics card is not being bottlenecked by anything to the best of my knowledge right now. So I'm not expecting any significant changes here. The CPU test is the one that I think is interesting. I think that's where we might see a difference after changing the motherboard and possibly experimenting with different RAM speeds as well. But we'll see. Anyway, there's our baseline. So to talk about my choice in motherboard here, obviously, again, we're working on price consciousness. However, the MSI -A Pro series, because there's been there's been a Z170, 270, 370, 390A Pro motherboard. You could call this an anti-gamer motherboard, where it's a Z series chipset, but without all of the usual gaming bells and whistles like RGB and stuff like that. But when I say anti-gamer, that's not to say it's not designed for gaming. It just doesn't have that stuff on it, but it meets the minimum requirements for everything else. It's very good value, and you need to spend a fairly considerable amount of money. You need to spend a fairly considerable amount of money to get anything that's measurably better. Now, you could spend extra to get something that's got RGB on it and stuff like that. However, based on the fact that this this board, oh god, heckin' thermal paste gets in everywhere. This system will now be going to the father who's doesn't care about RGB. So there's no point in paying any extra for that. So in this case, we can just get a base model Z390 chipset motherboard, and we'll get all of the benefits of Z390. Look at me building up on the motherboard box like a pro. That's another thing that people shout at me for as well. Whenever I build up a motherboard while it's in the case, they're just like, oh, you should be putting it on the box. I'm just like, you can do it whatever way you want. You know, there are many, many ways to skin a cat, as they say. Or I'll tell you what, I'll say there's many ways to bake a cake. Because that's a slightly more friendly way of putting it. Anyway, let's put the RAM in this as well. Where did I put the RAM? There it is. I'm really interested to do RAM tests later on in this. After we've got our next benchmark, I've got some Crucial ballistics. It's only 3000, but if I clock it up, it'll probably run 3200 or 3400. But I'm going to put that in there and see if that makes any difference as well, because I believe we should see a slight improvement by also upping the memory. If you're building a new computer, then absolutely you'd go minimum of 3000 megahertz memory, if possible 3200 or 3400, or as high as you want to go, really. But the problem is, again, it's just a case of, if you already have memory, is it worth spending for replacement memory for that benefit? And that's, again, something that I've been trying to convey in this video, but making a very poor job of it, is the concept of the problem we've got here is not what we buy for a computer that we're building, but where we spend money on an existing computer. Because for everything that we replace, not only are we having to buy the parts, but we're also rendering the old parts a waste as such, unless we sell them. Huh. The packaging is kind of lackluster on this Be Quiet. I mean, it does the job, but it was kind of just sitting in the box, really. It's not enormous, this thing. It's only triple heat pipes. It'll be fine, I'm sure. It's got pre-applied thermal paste on it. I'm going to use that. It'll be fine. It'll be interesting to see how well this guy does as well. If this does really bad temperatures, I will be swapping it out, because I said to the customer that this will be fine. And if it's not, then yeah, that's my bad. However, this cooler is like £20. It's very good value for money. Although I do wish that it wasn't using push pins, but that's okay. Right, let's sit this guy down. Which way around am I going to put this? See, I think it should go around that way with the Be Quiet logo that direction to match, you know, like Pro Series and stuff. But all the other writing on the motherboard is in that direction. It's tough. I'm going to put it that way around, and you guys can fight me in the comments. There we go. And give it the good old wiggle. There we go. Right, that's the AMD clamp. And now we've just got to put a fan on it. It's come with a Be Quiet Pure Wings 2. There's a lot to be said out of putting on an air cooler like this one while it's outside of the case. This is a lot easier outside the case than it is in the case. That much is definitely true. Right, that goes ready. Let's stick that all to one side. Cool. Right, all of these cables are already basically in the correct place. No, we need to move all these back to those cable, to these holes, because this motherboard is going to stick out to there. And we need some more standoffs as well. Those two will move down, and then we need another 3 up the back side. Okay. Oh, and we've got to change the rear I/O shield as well. I'm going to put that IO shield in right away, because otherwise I'm going to forget. Dig into my collection of standoffs. I need to replenish these sometime. I'm running out of ordinary standoffs in here. A lot of them are just weird exotic things. The thing is, a lot of cases these days, they don't exactly come with many spares anymore. You used to get lots of spares, but these days they kind of give you exactly the number you need, no more, no less. So it means that my spares here are not actually getting topped up very much. So every time I have to put extra standoffs in someone's case because I'm fitting a bigger motherboard, I'm actually running out of my extras. Okay, in you go. Heck. There we go. Just get that down to the bottom of the case, make sure there's nothing trapped underneath it. And now line it up onto the screw holes and make sure that none of the metal tabs are going to poke into the IO shield. That's these guys out down here. Just make sure you're bending those up as they're going in. Use a screwdriver or a metal prying tool or something like that just to guide them. Yep, that's all clear. There we go, and now I just need a screw just to lock that in place. And I'm just loose fitting these first couple of screws just so the motherboard can just settle slightly as I screw it in, but it just means I won't have to hold it in place. And I can also just drop my screwdriver and just make sure that everything is fine and nothing is horrifying. This SATA cable is in completely the wrong place. We're going to reroute him and him. In fact, yeah, I need to redo all the SATA cables. We'll adjust some of these, but the basics are fine. So yeah, okay, that's cool. I'm going to get that screwed in. I didn't really want to do a proper cable tidy job on this, but I'm kind of being forced into it here just by having to reroute some of these cables anyway. So I guess I'm just going to pull all this out and sort it out. The hell is that? Oh, okay. The reset switch is connected up to the RGB on this. Yeah, sure. Okay, I'll plug that back in a sec. That's the back wired up again. I haven't exactly gone mad on a cable tidy job with this one because due to reasons, I'm not getting my full usual flat fee labour with this. I just charged a fitting charge for the cooler and then we ended up doing the motherboard as well, and like I'm not going to do a complete system rebuild on this. However, as you can see, I have just adjusted the routing of the cables a bit so stuff is actually laying flat as it is and you can actually access the drive cage and that kind of thing. So I've relocated the SSD from the dedicated SSD mount to one of the hard drive caddies because that means I can put it, hecking fly, because that means I can put it on the same power chain as the hard drive so I don't have to run another power chain up here. So that just enables me to make everything a little bit tidier as well, which is always nice. Good, that's fine. I'm going to put the back cover on that. And now we've basically just got to drop the graphics card back in and we are all done. Oh, we need to move a PCI thing. PCI slot on this one is one lower than the previous motherboard, so I'm just going to move a blanking plate from slot 3 to slot 1. There we go, and we are all done. let's fire it up. It should just boot up as normal. Windows will have a bit of a hissy fit at first because the motherboard has changed, but we won't have to do any major system changes due to the magic of Windows 10. And I will drop straight into the BIOS just to do a sanity check in there. We'll have to wait for it to post first. It's probably going to take a couple of attempts to post because new motherboard, got to do RAM training, etc, etc. There we go. F1 run setup. Nice. Okay, right. Memory. Yeah, it's automatically configured that to 2400 megahertz. That's fine. And we're going to make sure that our CPU optimizations are on. Now, you might say, that's not fair. And I'm like, you're damn right it's fair. That's why we're changing the motherboard. But for now, we're just going to do just a basic... Actually, no, let's do an out-of-the-box test. Out-of-the-box test. I'm going to leave it on auto. Now, enhanced turbo, that might be on by default, but I'm going to leave it on auto. We're just going to have everything. This is how this motherboard would perform out of the box. You have not made any changes in the BIOS. Yes. Let's just get it into Windows, get another test, and see what it does. As a side note, I've just been doing a quick little burn test with the cooler on it just to make sure that it's all up to snuff. And yeah, we've been running for I've been running for quite a while, and we've just managed to peak in at 73 degrees on package temperature. Again, this is Intel burn-in test. This is a very punishing test. So yeah. That's hunky-dory. This little cooler is really capable. I'm very impressed. Considering it's like £20, £23, it's probably like $25 or something like that. That's a really good CPU cooler for just general builds. And it's really quiet as well. I mean, I guess it's in the name, but still, that's a really nice cooler. I'm very happy with that. Okay, updated score is 7208, which you may have noticed is actually slightly lower. We haven't got the program open because I just closed the program before I hit unpause because I'm an idiot. So our CPU score has actually gone down ever so slightly. I mean, you could argue it's within the margin of error. And our graphics score, 7559, that is 7559 versus 7572. So again, that's basically margin of error. So we've actually arguably lost a little bit of speed. Maybe if I run the test 3 times and average it, because I'm not doing scientific testing here, this is just ballpark stuff, then we might come out the same. But that's fine. We haven't done any tweaks to this yet. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to reboot into BIOS, and we're going to do some tweaks. Okay, so what I'm going to do, we're going to make sure that Enhanced Turbo is forcibly on. It was set to auto before. I'm not sure whether it was on or off, but now we're definitely on. We are going to do our AVX offset to 0. This probably isn't going to help us in 3D Mark at all. But what that basically means is that if we're running if we're running AVX stuff, which is typically heavily multi-threaded, so like when you're doing rendering and stuff like that, it won't downclock. It will boost to the max every time. So that gives us a little bit of extra power when we're running at full tilt. Then let's see, I am going to bump up our power a little bit. CPU V-Core, I'm going to give it 1.2, which is nothing massive at all. That's just giving it was previously running at about 1.15 or so I'm giving it just a little bit more volts just to make sure that we don't start hitting any kind of voltage limits or anything like that. And then I could also add in just a tiny amount of base clock and just a little bit more multiplier. However, I'm not going to do that yet. I'm just going to do these tweaks and just see what kind of difference that makes, if any at all. So let's try that. And also, will this RAM give us any more? I wonder if this RAM will give us 2666. Let's try it. There we go, 7272. Our graphics score is still the same as it has been previously. It's 7555, which is basically within the margin of error. However, we've bumped our CPU score up from a healthy amount, and that's just brought the overall score up. The difficulty is I've kind of screwed up now because now we don't know whether that was just the faster memory speeds or just giving the CPU a little bit more volts and the no AVX offsets just to make sure that it was just boosting a bit harder. I'm going to rerun the test with the memory back down at 2400 just to confirm which it was that helped us out there, because I'm curious as well now. 7276. We've got basically the same score with the memory running at 2400. So this means one of two things. Either A, going from 2400 to 2666 is not a big enough jump to make any measurable difference, or B, TimeSpy doesn't care about memory speed. I have a suspicion it's the latter. I think I've been down this route before with another computer and discovered that TimeSpy doesn't care about memory speed. However, we'll put that to the test when we put in some proper 3000, which I shall overclock to 3400 memory later on. However, as you can see, that basically means that just our little bit of extra voltage and the 0 AVX offset has improved our TimeSpy score just straight off the bat. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to dial in just a very small overclock. We're going to go, 4.6. So our stock speed is 4.6 single core, and we're currently doing 4.6 all core because we've got the all core boost turned on in the BIOS. And that means that it will go all the way up to 4.6 even if all cores are firing, which is where we're getting our extra speed from. So if I take that up to a 4.8 all core, we'll see another performance improvement. This CPU has got 5 gigahertz in it, no problem whatsoever. I'm not going to take it to that today. However, we're just going to notch it up just a little bit just to demonstrate the fact that now we have a Z series motherboard in there, we actually have the ability to do this. And it's really easy. That's one of the nice things about Intel. As much as I like AMD right now, AMDs are a freaking pain to overclock. Which is another way of saying I don't know how to overclock a Ryzen very well. However, Intel is really easy to overclock because you just do it the old school way. You do more volts, more multiplier. It's that simple. So yeah, that's what we're going to do now. Let's reboot. So we're going to go into overclock and we're going to set our CPU ratio to 48. So that is our base speed of 100 megahertz times 48 to give us an all-core overclock of 4.8 gigahertz. And let's see if it can do that at 1.2 volts. Let's try that out. It might want 1.25 for this. I don't know. We're about to find out. 7368. The numbers go up. We've also increased our graphics score a little bit on that as well. So you can see how we're actually really unlocking the true potential of this CPU now. And that's what processors like the KF is all about. It's about the fact that you can just go in and you can start tuning these numbers and just get more from it. And it's really easy to do this as well. All I've done is just I've just locked the voltage off at 1.2 and given it more multiplier. That's it. And there's so much more left in this. However, overclocking is another service entirely that is not something that we agreed upon in advance. So I'm not going to leave this stuff in place. I'm going to leave those optimizations in place. So the all-core boost and the AVX0 offset, just to make sure the CPU is giving that little bit extra as to what it did before. I mean, we've proven that it can do this already, and as I said, this CPU is good for 5 gigahertz easy. However, just getting through a single run of TimeSpy is not proof that this is stable. We've gotten our benchmark out of it. However, to really be stable as a daily driver, we have to do proper burn tests and long run burn-in tests to make sure that it's stable over long periods of time before I could be certain of giving it back to the customer. So I'm going to pull those clocks back out of it, but I've made my point. You can see how by putting in even just the cheapest Z390 board you can get, immediately we've started unlocking real potential with this CPU. And on top of that as well, I'm just going to have a quick nosy and just see what our temperatures are doing. That's fine. Our temperatures are up to 81 degrees peak here. So we have nudged our temperatures up by adding in this overclock, but ever so slight. Like if you wanted to go nuts with this CPU, you'd want to put a bigger cooler on it. You could I think we could get 5 gigahertz out of it with this cooler, but we'd be looking for 85 to 90 degrees there. So, you know, if we were actually going to go ham and clock the balls out of this CPU, we would have picked a bigger cooler. However, even with this 4.8 gigahertz sort of token gesture overclock, the temperatures are fine. You know, that is no problem. We're not throttling, and no game is going to actually take it to this temperature anyway. So yeah, that's a great result. One more test to run. I'm going to drop in some higher rated memory, and we're just going to see if that does anything for us. This is some Crucial Ballistics memory. I picked this stuff up for cheap because I needed it for another build, for my my Clockwork build, which is sitting on the side at the moment. I haven't had time to come back to it. So it's only 3000 megahertz, which is nothing to write home about by today's standards. But as I say, I wasn't looking for blistering performance, and I'm willing to bet that I can dial this stuff straight up to 3400 anyway, and that is plenty good enough for a typical gaming system. Until we get into, you know, mega overclocking anyway. Good, let's run it. And I've turned on XMP and dialed it in as 3400. I haven't actually tried running this memory at 3400 yet. However, I'm sure it will do. If this doesn't work, we'll drop it to 3200. But most of the time, unless you've got a really terabad motherboard, like the Aorus B450, you will be fine. Just notching your memory up by 1 or 2 speed marks. It'll be fine, I'm sure. It'll be fine, he said. You can run it at 3400, he said. Alright, 3200. We could dial in custom timings and get it to 3400. It can be done. It's just, at the moment, I'm just doing what I call free overclocks, where you haven't really done any real tuning. All I'm doing is just say, please run a little bit faster. You know. It's not quite as simple as just saying, run at this speed. But you can do that a little bit for what I call a token gesture overclock, where you've notched it up by a tiny amount that's probably not making a huge difference. But if you want modest or large overclocks, you've got to start tuning the numbers. Right, I need this run to be the last one because it's getting collected imminently, this computer. So I've got to drop in the old RAM, stick the covers on so it's actually ready to go out the door. I'd like to see just a tiny improvement just to show that memory speed does help. But I have suspicion that we're not going to see much because I just don't think that TimeSpy cares. Which is not to say that that's representative of all games. There's plenty of evidence out there that memory speed does help, especially on AMD. On Intel though, pretty certain it does, but maybe it's just not the case in TimeSpy. 7431. Yeah, it's gone up. So yeah, oof, quite a lot actually. So our graphics score 7632 is the same within a margin of error. However, our CPU score has gone up considerably. We've added another 200 points and change, 270 points onto the CPU score. So there it is, everyone. So adding in fast RAM will just, yeah, there we go. So fast RAM would also add in even more speed onto this. But again, where do we draw the line? And that brings us round to, once again, where we started out in this video of how much money, how much of my customers' money am I going to spend on their computer? How much do they want to spend? So in this instance, we have gotten an improvement out of just doing the motherboard alone. And the cooling, I suppose. Like some of these extra tweaks we've done have been made possible by the fact that we've uprated the cooling a little bit. But the point is, the moral of the story is, you can see how this system integrator build that was purchased, in ignorance with low-end back-end components was massively being throttled by that, despite having good headline stats. Yeah, despite having good headline specs of the 9600 KF and the 2060, it was not giving everything it had. Whereas now, just by changing the motherboard, we have immediately unlocked significantly greater potential from it. And with more RAM and an overclock in there as well, it's got even more to give. So that's where we're going to leave it for now. I'm going to swap the RAM back out, and I'm going to pull back that overclock just to something where I know that it's going to be stable and I know the customer is not going to have any problems with it. And we're going to leave it there. So I hope this video was kind of interesting on showing how you can optimize a poorly optimized build. That's really the takeaway from this, is showing you just how we can optimize a poorly optimized build and just some of the things that are going through my mind when you're effectively spending someone else's money in order to do that as well. Thank you very much for watching, everyone, and I'll see you all next time. Bye for now.